Hello everybody, Josh Johnston here, AgriGold Agronomist from Kentucky. I'm going to give you the agronomy tip of the month in video format. I wanted to talk about soil sampling, especially this year with DAP and potash soaring over $700 a ton. I feel like soil sampling is going to be more important this fall than ever. So step one of soil sampling is an accurate sample. You really need to be subdividing your fields into categories. So if you have a farm that lays flat and it's really good, then you have a hillside in the same field, you really need to break those apart and subdivide that into like 20-acre groups of likeness. So all the bottoms will be together, all the hillsides will be together. That way you get a really accurate assessment of what's going on into the field. Step two is get an accurate sample. The tendency is just to take this probe and job it into the ground right through the fodder and the weeds. That's actually not what you want to do. You want to take your foot and rake it back and get rid of all the debris. Then probe just the soil. It's also very important that you get an accurate depth. Most every soil probe will have a mark on it right at 6 inches. And you want to try to maintain that 6-inch depth as consistently as you possibly can. There's no need in mixing the samples. You can see in this bucket, it is important that you use a plastic bucket, but there's no need to take your hand and mix this all together. Just dump this in your sample bag, send it to the lab. They'll dry the sample and then grind it, so that'll save you a whole extra step. Next will be interpreting the soil test, which is probably the most important step. Now that you have an accurate sample, how do you interpret what you're looking at? What I want you to do is go straight to pH, especially years like this where fertilizer is high. Once your pH gets out of whack, your nutrient availability is going to be altered. If you get too low or too high, the amount of nutrients that you have in your soil are going to be locked up. And keep in mind, soil pH is a logarithmic scale. So if I go from 6.5 to 5.5, that's 10 times. If I go from 6.5 to 4.5, that's 100 times different. It's a logarithm. So minor changes in pH are a really, really big deal. So correcting your pH should be step one this fall. The next thing you will look at is your phosphorus reading. If you're in that 40 to 60 pounds range, you're in really, really good shape. I would focus in on removal. If you're higher than that, say 60 plus, I would consider not putting any DAP out there this fall. The next thing you want to look at on your soil test is go straight to the base saturation. That's a combination of 5 different nutrients: potassium, magnesium, calcium, hydrogen, and sodium. The neat thing about those 5 when it comes to base saturation, those numbers all combined together can only add up to be 100. So you can't just change one of them. If something goes up, something else has to go down. That's just how it works. So your targets for base saturation, you need to be somewhere in that 3 to 5 range on K, somewhere around that 65 to 70% range on calcium, 12 to 15 for magnesium, 10 on hydrogen, and your sodium needs to be less than 1. So the soil sample that we keep looking at, if we just focus in on that, what would you do if that was your soil sample? That has a pH of 5.3. We have to address that. We'll come back to that in a moment. The phosphorus on that sample is 56 pounds. The beauty about that 56, once we fix the pH, more phosphorus will become available. So I think this year, if that's where you're at, I would consider no DAP. But hone in on the base saturation. Potassium and sodium are in really good shape. Calcium, magnesium, and hydrogen, they need correction. I think the hydrogen will correct itself over the course of the winter. As we get rainfalls, those hydrogens will flush through the system. But we have to correct calcium and magnesium. In this case, we need both, calcium and mag. I would consider dolomite lime. Really high calcium, really high magnesium. That'll adjust the pH, get our calciums where they need to be, and get our magnesium where they want to be. So I know that's a brief rundown of proper soil testing and how to interpret the soil test. If you have other questions, you can reach out to me or any of your local AgriGold agronomists for help. Thank you.